AI, to me, is absolutely going to be a huge game changer for the pharma industry in a way that's going to get rid of all this talent and reduce costs. Actually, no. With safety critical industries, you are going to need human in the loop.
Healthcare is changing, not in small steps, but in giant leaps. AI, intelligent platforms, and connected ecosystems are reshaping how we diagnose, treat, and even think about health itself.
Innovation happens at the edges. It happens in academia. Regulators are innovating today. The FDA, the MHRA, having spoken to them over the last few weeks, their use of AI is very, very innovative. And I think pharma can learn a thing or two.
It takes leaders with vision, with compassion, and with the ability to bring others with them on the journey. And that's exactly why I'm so excited about our today's guest. I've had the privilege of working alongside Rohit Alimchandani. He has this rare strategic vision, the ability to see the bigger picture while never losing the sight of the human being at the center of it. He has the gift for simplifying the most complex challenges and shaping solutions that not only solve problems but resonate deeply with clients. He connects with authenticity, compassion, and humility, and combine that one of the smartest minds in the industry, and you have a leader who inspires confidence and trust in everyone around him.
How will patients experience AI? I think most importantly, it's going to empower patients. Ultimately, when you have access to data to a reasonable degree, and then you have a better understanding of what's happening with you, I think that's going to be massively empowering for patients.
Rohit has recently stepped into a new role as Senior Vice President and Head of Healthcare, Life Sciences and Public Sector at GlobalLogic, where he's driving transformation at the intersection of technology, engineering, and patient impact.
When I talk about the breadth of capabilities, I would say a really good technology firm needs to be tested in a few ways, right? One of those ways is, can you solve the problem within a particular silo to make it more connected? And then can you solve it across? And what I mean by solving the problem, it's not about landing up at perfection, that you have every node of every problem, interconnected and beautifully done. It's about, have you got the general connections there?
In this conversation, we'll explore his journey, his leadership philosophy, and his vision for the future of healthcare and life sciences. So please join me in welcoming my guest, Rohit Alimchandani. Rohit, welcome to Direct Dialogues. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to say something from the heart. Over 93% of the people who watch this podcast regularly haven't subscribed. And listen, I get it. Life is busy. You click, you watch, you move on. But if you've ever felt like this show brings you value, if it has made you think, sparked a new idea, introduced you to something inspiring, then I have a small favor to ask. Please hit that subscribe button. It might not seem like much, but to me, it means everything. This podcast has always been a labor of love. No sponsors, no script, just honest conversations with people trying to make a difference in the world of healthcare. And your support, your one click, helps me keep doing that. It helps more people discover these voices. It helps this community grow. So if you're here, if you believe in this, please consider subscribing. Thank you for being here. Now let's get into the episode. Healthcare is changing, not in small steps, but in giant leaps. AI, intelligent platforms, and connected ecosystems are reshaping how we diagnose, treat, and even think about health itself. But technology on its own doesn't change industries. People do. It takes leaders with vision, with compassion, and with the ability to bring others with them on the journey. And that's exactly why I'm so excited about our today's guest. I've had the privilege of working alongside Rohit Alimchandani during my time at Cognizant. What always struck me was his unique blend of qualities. He has this rare strategic vision, the ability to see the bigger picture while never losing the sight of the human being at the center of it. He has the gift for simplifying the most complex challenges and shaping solutions that not only solve problems but resonate deeply with clients. Rohit is quite simply a people person. Whether it's his team, his clients, or industry peers, he connects with authenticity, compassion, and humility. And combine that one of the smartest minds in the industry, and you have a leader who inspires confidence and trust in everyone around him. Rohit has recently stepped into a new role as Senior Vice President and Head of Healthcare, Life Sciences and Public Sector at GlobalLogic, where he's driving transformation at the intersection of technology, engineering, and patient impact. In this conversation, we'll explore his journey, his leadership philosophy, and his vision for the future of healthcare and life sciences. So please join me in welcoming my guest, Rohit Alimchandani. Rohit, welcome to Direct Daddy.
Thanks a lot, Kaushik. And I think that is the nicest introduction anyone has ever done for me. You are way, way too kind. And I just want to tell the audience that only believe about 50% of what he said, okay? Because he's certainly been very, very kind.
No, I think every word I said is true, and it came from the bottom of my heart. So I trust me, whatever I said is true. Rohit, I recently got to know that you've moved on from Cognizant to Global Logic. And at Cognizant, I think you served for more than 18 years and you manage this massive portfolio of life sciences vertical. And it reminds me how careers in this space aren't linear. They are like ecosystems constantly evolving. And with more than 25 years in the industry, you've seen the evolution of life sciences firsthand. So my question is, what led you to this new chapter at Global Logic? And what were the defining moments in your career that shaped your leadership philosophy?
Wow, that's a great starting question. Thank you for that. Let me start off with the first part of your question, which is why I made this sort of move to Global Logic. Look, I want to start off by saying I loved my time at Cognizant. You know, you don't stay somewhere for pretty much 18 years if you're not going to enjoy what you do, you're not going to like what you do, and or even love what you do. So I loved every minute of working there. I think the key for me was about, if I was to really put it in a nutshell and be very open about it, it's about being in your comfort zone, right? And I really got this realization. It was only really 3 months after I moved to Global Logic that I really processed what this was all about. And someone asked me, they go, "What's it like working at Global Logic?" I said, "I love it. I'm learning so much." And you know, that's super cliched, but that it is true. Like I was learning a lot. And they said, what do you mean? Why are you learning so much? And I said, look, the reason I'm learning a lot is because at Cognizant, everything that I did over the last 5, 10 years was muscle memory. And I'm not, well, okay, I won't exaggerate and say everything. A lot of the things that I had to do day to day, because you do have to be creative when it comes to working on engagements and so on and so forth. But a lot of the things that I was doing was very much focused on muscle memory. So I could do it, you know, very easily. It was within my comfort zone. Coming to Global Logic has totally pulled me out of that comfort zone. And now nothing is muscle memory. Everything is new. And as a result of that, it's all about getting a better understanding of who you are at every stage, right? When you're younger, you challenge yourself a lot more and constantly. I think, you know, now having grown older, I wanted to challenge myself again, see if I can do what I used to be able to do better, which is adapt to new contexts and new situations and learn more. And I'm, you know, all I can say is I'm really, really enjoying it. It's a phenomenal company. The tech that we work on is absolutely amazing. So no regrets. I would say that's probably the primary reason. And then, you know, the other reason is really about getting a new experience across new industries as well. I worked in public sector healthcare for the first 5 or 6 years of my career. I was desperate to go back to public sector healthcare. This truly presented an opportunity, the role that I'm taking at Global Logic, to work in not just public sector healthcare, but across the public sector. And I'm very passionate about the citizen experience. So having that opportunity coupled with doing what I love, which is, you know, life sciences and healthcare, I thought, okay, this is a great confluence. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. And it pulls me out of my comfort zone and it gets me to do something completely new, which is, you know, to build a business. So I just thought, yes, this is exactly what I need at this stage of my career and made the move.
Wow, that's fantastic. Seems like you're really enjoying your new role. And if I may ask, what were the defining moments in your career that shaped your leadership philosophy?
Wow, that's a really difficult question. And I think it's very difficult to explain leadership philosophy in terms of moments. I think a lot of leadership comes down to, for me, has come down to the examples of people that I've worked with. And I've been really, really privileged to work with some phenomenal people at the early stage of my career. Back when I was at Accenture, there were a couple of people, a gentleman I work with who I'm collaborating with right now. His name is David Logue. He showed me a very, I guess, very compassionate, very empathetic style of leadership. He was your friend, but he gave you feedback, right? And feedback that really helped you shape things as to how you were. When I worked at Sapient, there was a lady called Tish Quinlan who I worked for. Tish truly taught me the value of preparation. I'll never forget, we used to go into these meetings and we were working on the national program for IT. We'd go into these meetings and we would know exactly who every client was. This is, you know, pre-LinkedIn, right? But we do research on them, figure out who they were, what their drivers were, and made sure that we're going to position ourselves in the meeting for success. And these were delivery meetings. So it wasn't like I wasn't in sales at the time. So it's really about positioning ourselves for success means how are we going to mitigate risk for them? That level of depth in thinking. I think at Cognizant, it has definitely been Gagan Sial. He was my boss for, goodness me, 17 and a half years. I reported into him, which is intense. I mean, that's longer than I've known my wife, right? So it's a little bit awkward at home sometimes. But, I think the reality is his intellectual leadership, his ability to navigate and solve problems, his ability to communicate with incredible clarity, and his ability to almost mentor you in a way like he has this knack where every idea that comes to you feels like you got that idea, right? Like you incubated it, even though when you think back on it, you said, didn't Gagan say that earlier? You always think like that. So it was all of those things, all of those leaders who kind of shape you into the person you are today. It's working under their leadership that you learn, but then everyone talks about who they learn from. It's not just the leaders that you work for that you learn from. It's the people that you work with and the leader and the people that you lead. You learn so much from them. At Cognizant, I've learned from a number of people who've taught me. I can give you various names, but we'd just be name dropping here, but a number of people who've taught me the value of entertaining clients and
Yes.
making them feel special, or the value of going out and just diversifying and networking in your client base, or being bold enough to go have a conversation. But I think, one person I do want to call out is Helen Dixon, who's one of the marketing leaders at Cognizant. She's taught me ultimately the value of believing in myself, right?
Yeah.
And having faith in what I can do and recognizing that I'm able to contribute. I can make 1+1 = 3. I think for me, I think she's been quite a significant influencer for me. So, that I think is what shaped you. It's the people that you work for, and certainly the people that you work with. That's what really shapes you as a leader, rather than individual milestones that taught me anything specific.
Wow, that is so true. And I recognize a few names there. I've had the opportunity of speaking with Gagan, and he's such an inspiring leader, so approachable, so humble, so grounded, really, really an inspiring figure. And also Helen, wonderful colleague and fantastic person. So thanks for sharing that, Rohit. Rohit, high performing teams in healthcare tech are unique. They need both deep empathy for patients and razor sharp technical expertise. And I was reading through a recent McKinsey report that showed that pharma and life sciences companies investing in strong leadership and culture see up to 20% faster adoption of digital solutions. It's a proof that leadership isn't just about delivery, but about belief. So, what leadership lessons have you learned along the way about building teams that can thrive in such a high stake, rapidly changing environment?
I mean, do you know what? This is 3 for 3 in terms of great questions, right? Because I need to think quite profoundly about this. I would say the first and foremost is leadership is not about you being the star. Leadership is about basking in the glow of everyone else that you work with being a star. Okay. For me is the most effective form of leadership. It's when you make people that you work alongside you effective. I think the other element that I would add to that as well is to make people effective is about giving them or empowering them, giving them the power and agency over, I guess, a certain boundary where they can operate as they please with enough flexibility to make those decisions. But equally, I think you can have the authority to make decisions, but if you haven't got the enablement, and what I mean by that is the ability to get content or help, I think, for me is absolutely critical, which is that you as a leader need to be able to step in and help your team achieve their goals. So yeah, empower them, but also help them do their job when they need help, right? And then that naturally segues on to, for me, I guess the third point in that, which is actually asking for help, creating an atmosphere that's safe where people can ask for help. When you ask for help, what you're doing is you're not giving up. The act of asking for help is a clear demonstration of an individual not giving up. And I love that people come in and say, I need help with this, which means they're passionate about something. They want to do it right. They may have 9 out of the 10 skills to do it right. Either they ask me to provide that gap of one, I can help them find someone who can fill that one gap, and suddenly they can do it. So it wasn't that they gave up and they just sat there, which they could have easily done by not asking for help. They asked for help and then they thrived, right? Because they were not giving up. So I think it's those three elements for me that really make that that impact overall from a leadership perspective. Those are the real effects. And then there's the other stuff as well. You got to bet on people. Not everybody. It's so building a high performance team isn't that every single individual is a rock star. It's about finding individuals who go together, right? The right combinations of people. The way in which I see it is, if I have a canvas, I see it as a jigsaw puzzle, right? And it's about all the pieces that fit together that make a whole. And that could mean different skills. Some people are technocrats. Some people are really strong at relationship. Some people are very, very good at going into an account and growing the relationship. Some people are really good at finding new accounts and new relationships to start. It's about creating combinations of those people that are complementary within a particular context or setting, and then deploying them in that way. I think that for me is absolutely another element that I would add that's critical. So we really need to look at how those complementary skills play out.
I think it's the ability to see that the diverse set of skills that your team members have, and admiring the unique set of skills that each individual brings to the team. And I've seen you firsthand in all your meetings and how you addressed your team, how you gave credit to each and every individual in the team every time, the way you inspired all of us. It was just incredible. I remember we all used to look forward to those Friday calls to have the opportunity of speaking with you. And that was incredibly inspiring.
You're very kind, and I do know the truth about the Friday calls that you were probably not looking forward to, but you're being very kind. So we'll keep going. I like this. I like the kindness. This is awesome.
And Rohit, on the topic of AI, intelligent platforms and connected ecosystems, how do you see AI and intelligent platforms changing the way patients experience healthcare? And how do you personally balance innovation with responsibility?
So for me, that's a pet topic of mine. I love talking about this, so I could talk about this for ages. So now I'm going to try and say, like, how do I keep this very succinct, right? That's going to be my challenge. Look, from how will patients experience AI, I think most importantly, I think it's going to empower patients. Ultimately, when you have access to data about you that you yourself can interpret, or you have the ability to have a tool interpret it for you to a reasonable degree, and then you have a better understanding of what's happening with you, I think that's going to be massively empowering for patients. So I think empowerment for me would be the first one, and almost a sub branch of that would be literacy, right? Because you get to learn more about your disease or about the situation that you're in, or how to get healthier. So there's so many other things. I think the second thing is about the experience. I used to give this sort of lecture annually on digital health to oncology master students at King's College. And one of the examples we used to talk about there, so there was, I actually gave it jointly with one of the associates at Cognizant. Her name's Akila Hassan, really, really bright person. So this is her example. But, her example was of how digital platforms, and this is even pre-AI, coming in and have actually been able to increase or improve the collaboration between the healthcare provider and the patient, to the extent that in the context of cancer, for example, with someone who's on a 6-month palliative care experience or sometime longer, with digital collaboration, with continued collaboration and communication, their outcomes during palliative care are significantly better. Their experience of that, if it's about nutrition or general health. So, people are in a situation where they're suffering, but you can ease their suffering through the use of digital platforms. I think that's going to be very significant, versus we were giving an example of a few years ago where actually not necessarily you could ease a person suffering, because the way in which you connect remotely, we're talking about 10, 15 years ago,
Yes.
The way in which you connect remotely was mainly through phone calls. And, a phone call is an event. It happens once, and that's about it. With digital, you can push information gradually. You can have a constant stream of information. You can leave messages that can be read at people's convenience and then continue conversations. And even though they may not be instantaneous all the time, depending on availability or time of day, but they can still have faster and better outcomes for patients in the long run. So that's really the digital platform angle. So you've got empowerment with education. You've got better outcomes overall through a better experience. But then equally, I think your data and the information about you, the way in which healthcare providers, the way in which life sciences companies and pharmaceutical companies and med devices companies are using information about you to accelerate drug development, to make their drugs safer. I think all that does is, again, it leads to better outcomes. So there is just such an incredible body of evidence that exists today that really points to there is, the use of digital empowers patients, the use of digital increases engagement and improves engagement, and the use of digital allows you to make better medicines faster, cheaper, learn more about your patients better, right? Build better devices, all of which ultimately contribute to better patient outcomes. And that's what the holy grail of healthcare is, right? It's about having improved patient outcomes along with a reasonably good experience, or a great experience if you can. But with some of the challenges nowadays, a reasonably good one is a solid high bar.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you said it. And looking at it from a patient's perspective, someone who's recently been diagnosed with a debilitating condition, they are full of anxiety, they are full of questions, and doctors and nurses don't have enough time. They might be able to spend half an hour or an hour to educate them, but then you are eventually left with the digital tools as a patient. And that's what supports you throughout your journey. And with the advancements in digital technologies, they are getting more and more sophisticated, and this entire ecosystem built with humans and machines put together gives a lot of support and help to the patients.
Completely
Absolutely.
agree. And we see every pharma has that, right? Nowadays, pharmaceutical companies don't just focus on the pill, they're looking beyond the pill. We've heard that so much, beyond the pill, beyond the pill. That's because they want to empower patients. And it is about that patient experience, patient engagement. GSK have a chief patient officer. It's no longer the chief medical officer necessarily, it's a chief patient officer. So that pivot towards moving away from the technocratic element of medical or medicine to patients is the exact right pivot that the industry needs to focus on, because ultimately they are the people who benefit from all of this. And that's the end client, that's the end customer.
Talking about the AI-driven solutions, Rohit, I was recently reading about quantum computing in one of your recent Pharma Times article, where you wrote about its potential to accelerate R&D. And it struck me how sometimes the technologies that sound like science fiction are actually the ones closest to reshaping reality. AI in drug discovery, for example, is already helping design new molecules in days instead of years. So, what are the most exciting AI-driven solutions in life sciences today that you believe will have real-world impact in the next few years?
So I want to answer that question specifically, but equally, I don't want to answer that question because I don't think it's one thing. I think we're at a crossroads. We're at a real paradigm shift right now because I don't think it's one solution. I think it's the opportunity that the industry has to innovate today with the tools that exist today that I believe can significantly accelerate how, for example, in the life sciences world, medicines can be produced, how quickly they can be produced. So if we look at, pharma's legacy has been all about the product, right? It's been the pill, elements around the pill. But I think the world today is the pill, the elements around the pill, and the data that goes around it, and the AI that actually ingests that data and produces meaning out of it. So if you want to put it as a soundbite, 20th century was about product, right?
Yes.
Great blockbuster drugs and so on and so forth. The 21st century is about platform, right? So what's the context of that? Well, everybody knows the cost of R&D is escalating massively.
Yes.
I think the cost of getting a drug to market now on average is 10 to 12 years with 2.7 billion to 3 billion US dollars on average. That's an intense amount of money.
Yeah.
So, on that basis, there is a huge driver for change to say, how do we accelerate that and reduce the cost of that? And to think of a enterprise level pharma platform is something that you need to actually drive that. So what is a pharma platform, right? So, for me, how would I express it? It would be a shared, intelligent, obviously everything has to have AI in it, but certainly AI is a really important part of it. A shared, intelligent, reusable, enterprise-wide foundation that links all aspects of the pharma, hence enterprise-wide, but an enterprise-wide foundation. Okay, so a great analogy for it would be it's not about having a bunch of cars, right? It's about building a factory that can make cars. So
Yes.
that's what it is. And the beauty of a factory is you're constantly learning. Every time you produce a car, you get data about what it took to produce that car. That then goes back in to make the process better. So this is an enterprise-wide platform that's compounding continually and making things better. And I think that for me is what a pharma platform looks like, right? You can call it a pharma operating system, right? A business operating system for pharma. And look, a platform isn't something that has been, that's new to pharma. You have mRNA as a platform, or you have various other platforms, but ultimately, this is about the entire connected ecosystem, because when you had various biological platforms, they existed in a silo. When you had lovely manufacturing platforms or commercial platforms, they all existed together with some connections between them. But I think when you look at the capabilities that you have today, and I'll come to that in a second, I personally believe that there is a huge opportunity to connect all of those functions together very, very tightly to be able to actually build an enterprise-wide platform. So, the Pharma OS, as I call it, is the operating system behind this platform, right? The strategy is you have a platform, so you have this connected end-to-end ability to produce, to discover, produce, and sell medicines. And then you have the engine, which is this connected engine that actually does that. So what are the things that you need to be able to do that? Well, you need sort of, if I was to think of it, you need 5 pillars. And people are doing it today in pockets, not necessarily end to end, or they're doing it in a way that sets themselves up. So in the next 2 to 3 years, what you will see is these pharmaceutical companies connecting all these capabilities together. So the first and foremost is, a cloud native data backbone, right? You want to call it a data fabric, you want to call it, something else, that's fine. But ultimately, that's what it is. And you go to any pharma company, right? Be it GSK, AstraZeneca, Roche, with Flatiron and so on and so forth. They've all got those data fabrics out there. But then you get the AI core sitting on that, right? And by the way, the data needs to be clean. It has to have, it's got to be fair and follow fair principles and so on and so forth, right? And then you have the AI pipelines with the appropriate governance on top, right? So, a great example of that with someone who's got a great AI core is like in silico medicine, the guys in Hong Kong who are coming up with, who are discovering medicines for like idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, right? And they're doing in silico trials and whatnot. I mean, that is like serious science fiction. I used to watch that in Star Trek with Geordie LaForge coming out, or not Dr. Beverly Crusher coming up with, all of these little things. And now you've got, real people in today doing that we thought was 3-4 centuries into the future. So absolutely amazing. And so it's about getting those AI pipelines that you create across the various functions that are reusable. And then every time you reuse those pipelines, you're saving time. You're creating efficiency. And when you reuse those pipelines right across the entire end-to-end life cycle, from a discover, make, and sell drugs, right? You're starting to see compounding efficiency gains all the way through, notwithstanding the feedback cycle that comes in and then further enhances the efficiency of the process. So that's the second pillar. I think, the third one is all about the digital operations of that, the workflows, the workflow engine. Now, everyone says the death of SaaS and all of that. Honestly, I don't know what that will be, but ultimately you will need orchestrated workflows. But the difference is today, in the way in which products are being built, they're incredibly modular. So, it's about creating then a fabric of operations on top of that so that various capabilities can get consumed. So in the same way that you create a data fabric, creating an operational workflow fabric, so capabilities can get consumed and it's standardized once but scaled everywhere. right? Now, when you look at the means of making a medicine, that is very, very complicated. So again, it's about doing it in bite-sized chunks. And that's why I said it's modular, because not everything is connected end to end. It's a single workflow, but it's about having connected workflows that work elastically. Where you need more of them, they can expand and scale. Where you need less of them, they'll go in and contract or be used minimally. And then obviously with that comes the sort of experience layer on top of that, right? So it's about having the right kind of patient journeys on top, or the HCP journeys, or the patient engagement and the feedback loops to make this better. So we have all of this connected ecosystem. It's about how people interact with it and how people feed back to it and make it better. And then finally, not all research, not all sales, not everything is done today in a very globally distributed fashion with a huge ecosystem of partners. So what you need as the final pillar is this ecosystem connect that's going to link everything together. So that's going to be like APIs that you have with CROs, for example, or how you share information in an open way with regulators, because regulators are very open to that as well. Innovation happens at the edges. It happens in academia. Regulators are innovating today. The FDA, the MHRA, having spoken to them over the last few weeks, their use of AI is very, very innovative. And I think pharma can learn a thing or two from them. So, it's about how do you pull that innovation in through creating a more open ecosystem and driving that ecosystem connect. So, I'll give you another example of that is, how AWS does data exchange collaborations, right?
Yeah.
Just opens it up and say, come and share with me and I will host it and allow it to connect everywhere. That's what we're trying to do, which is connect the dots and connect people to really innovate faster. Again, highly complex in a highly fragmented environment, but if you become the point of convergence, then you have the power to really, let's say, drive the innovation forward. And really, for me, in putting these sort of 5 pillars together, the data fabric, the AI core, the operations fabric, the experience after that, and the ecosystem, and pulling all of that together, what you're really getting is, significant, you're going to get significant acceleration from a speed perspective. With all that reusability, automatically, you're going to get a cost reduction. You're obviously going to get quality improvements because it's a feedback loop. It's constantly getting better. You can scale that. You're going to build it to scale. We talked about elasticity, and you're going to get learning as well because you're constantly getting metadata from this and you're understanding different things and you're connecting to, a wider ecosystem as well to learn. So it's internal learning, outside in learning, incredible amounts of learning. So, every data set, every trial is going to make that platform, that end-to-end lifecycle platform, smarter. So yeah, to me, that really is the next sort of 3 to 5 years of pharma. It's about pharma who have built these capabilities, connecting them together, right? Using these sort of 5 pillars that they've got to really accelerate innovation. And I think, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they could build siloed platforms, but today, with the technology that's available, they can build these connected platforms and connected AI to really drive discovery of drugs and the manufacture and sort of commercialization of those drugs much more efficiently. Sorry, that was a very lengthy monologue.
No, that was really helpful. That was really amazing. And if I were to simplify this for someone who doesn't understand technology or doesn't have any technology background, let me say I'm going to oversimplify this, but correct me if I'm going wrong. So is it like laying out the infrastructure for electricity in your house? So instead of lighting candles in silos, now you've got the capability in every corner of your house, and you can light a bulb, you can charge your phone or connect to a refrigerator.
That is a much better analogy than my analogy. Yes, I like it. Yes, absolutely spot on.
Thank you. I think that was very well explained, and I really like the analogy of the car. It is so spot on and helped me understand. I think I don't come from a hardcore tech background, so it always helps when you share these sort of analogies. And I'm sure a lot of the people who are watching this episode do not necessarily have a very heavy tech background. So thanks for explaining.
But I think the easiest way to put it is it's about having all your capabilities connected enough with the feedback loop to get compounding. I mean, I'm hoping that, most people understand the value of compound interest, right? And ultimately, That's what it is. It's about, continual feedback every single time you loop around it, you learn and you make things better. And that compounding effect of having a connected ecosystem that can scale, right, across the various functions, to me, that's what's really going to drive that overall acceleration. I don't feel it's going to be one technology or AI in a silo. It's about actually having all of those sort of 5 pillars implemented, having it all connected across the board. That's what's going to give you the end outcome. It's not easy. I mean, people haven't worked in silos for so long that they're going to break those silos. So that culture of collaboration, right, is going to be really, really difficult. I think there's a lot of legacy tech hanging around as well. I mean, you've seen it, right? There's still a lot of legacy because sometimes the cost of upgrade is high, right? The skills to do all of this are not easy to find. Someone to really execute on that grander vision is not difficult. All of the AI ethics around that, how you handle the data sensitively, I think we're navigating through all of that today as well. But ultimately, platformization is really, really difficult. Then I think, to my mind, becoming irrelevant is much harder. So I'd rather just try that platformization, build that acceleration into your ecosystem. And that way, you continue to stay ahead of the curve and stay relevant.
Right. I think that point is very relevant for today's time. And we see situations where one business unit or one business function is trying a proof of concept in AI to address one particular business need, and another one is doing something else. And you end up having silos of different technologies that are not talking to each other. They're just ad hoc systems that are put in place to address that specific need. So if someone who's watching this episode and they want to embark on a journey of laying the sort of infrastructure that you just outlined, what are the steps they need to take to be able to get there?
That is, for me, I think that's where do I start? So that's a very, very large piece of work. I think, first of all, I think the data fabric journey has begun, but I think it's about building it up in parts. So for me, it would really be about, you talked about someone implementing AI in silos. What's the joined up vision for that? So it's about looking at the R&D process and then saying, with the capabilities that we have today, which systems need to be connected to each other to drive these workflows end to end. And I know that, people within the pharma business and pharma tech understand that in detail. So it's about laying the architectural framework, the groundwork. And I don't mean technology architecture, but the business architecture framework to say which of these capabilities within early stage discovery and commercial first need to be connected. So you need to solve out for within the silos, and then you need to solve across the silos. That's how I would approach it, which is, can you solve the problem within a particular silo to make it more connected? And then can you solve it across? And what I mean by solving the problem, it's not about landing up at perfection, that you have every node of every problem interconnected and beautifully done. It's about, have you got the general connections there sitting across the data fabric, possibly with, a modular user interface? And then can I actually then say, okay, how does R&D talk to manufacturing, particularly from a lab's perspective? Where is the connectivity there that's easiest? How do we make that much more easy and integrate that information and share that information across the board? And as these silos start breaking down slowly, you start seeing that compound effect. So it's about first looking at, if I was to lay down a narrative, understanding what needs to be connected, number one. Then it's about within the various functions, making those connections to make them work. So doing it at a smaller scale within your function, and then finding out the low-hanging fruit across functions to start breaking those silos. That's how I would approach it. But do I have an answer to how to make that happen? If I did, it's me. I would be doing something very different right now. But yeah, it's deeply challenging. But I think that's where it's going to head. It's multi-year. We're looking at 3, 5, 10 years to solve some of these problems. I don't think, and there will be, and the beauty of this is, and the beauty of tech is, there will be disruptive technologies that come through, right?
Yeah.
In 10 years, quantum computing comes in, its ability to sift through data, and look at things. I mean, I don't understand it to the level of detail that I'd like, but its ability to accelerate the way in which we process data and process information is going to be a game changer. How's that going to be applicable? We haven't even overlaid some of that on top. So the pace of change is so fast. So I think what we need to say is everything at Point Solutions, they're evolving very quickly. At a strategic level, the bigger vision is bring it all together, connect it all, and then you get that compounding.
That's very well explained. Thank you so much for that. And going back to Global Logic, one of the things I noticed is Global Logic talks a lot about engineering impact. And I love that phrase because it's not just about tech for tech's sake, it's about real human outcomes. For example, during the pandemic, Global Logic worked on digital front doors, and telehealth platforms that quite literally became lifelines. It's a proof that behind every line of code, there's a patient story. Can you share examples of how you've seen engineering translate into real impact in healthcare and patient lives?
So obviously, in the spirit of client confidentiality, I can't share names, but I think some of the things that I've been incredibly impressed by from my perspective has been the breadth of capabilities in Global Logic. And when I talk about the breadth of capabilities, I would say a really good technology firm needs to be tested in a few ways, right? One of those ways is can a product that they build withstand the scrutiny of consumers who are picky, who have options, and let's say hard to please, right? Because they have so many options. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing would be, can they create high throughput capabilities? So where you have massive scale, how do you deal with it? And then the third thing for me is, can they work in a highly regulated environment where the commitment to quality is absolutely paramount? Notwithstanding that, you have to be high quality in those other environments, but when something's safety critical and is about saving lives, there is much more focus on quality, because those last 1 to 0.5% extra makes the difference between a life saved and a life lost. So first of all, I benchmark companies on those three parameters. Can they do that? And I think Global Logic, first of all, for me, this is what was so attractive. They passed those three tests with flying colors, right? So, if I give you a sort of slightly, let's say, simple example on the consumer side, we've worked, so if you ever go to McDonald's and order from the digital platform, we've done the digital platform. So I love giving that as an example, because it's quite cool, because my kids love McDonald's. I'm not allowed to eat it for various reasons, but yeah, there you go. I think in terms of high throughput work, we have built incredibly scaled capabilities for our parent company, Hitachi, which has been high throughput, but equally, we are very deep in software-defined networks and so on and so forth. So a lot of that high throughput work for a number of large networking providers, we build those networks for them. So we are able to deal with masses of throughput, right? So you've got consumer grade stuff that's under scrutiny. We've done that. We've done incredible amounts for massive conglomerate, for specialized companies who are working on high throughput. And then I think it is about, can we work from a safety critical perspective in a regulated environment? And I think some of the work that we've done in the diabetes space, particularly with insulin, in the neuromodulation space, particularly in Parkinson's disease and so on and so forth, I think personally, for me, I've never seen work that's been as, let's say, exciting as that. So my own experience of that is, I've worked in the sector for a long time, across health and life sciences. But this is one of the few times where the product actually makes you go, wow, right? When I see some of these products, because you don't realize, or maybe unless you're exposed to that particular disease, and those therapeutics become available to you, you don't realize just how life-changing those diseases are. So for some of the therapeutics, for example, we know that 750,000 plus patients have been, positively impacted by them. So I think when you have such a tangible set of outcomes, you truly feel that, yes, we have made a big difference. And that work with purpose makes a difference to you waking up in the morning every day and wanting to come to work. I think that's really important. And it does have a very positive impact on your disposition for the company and for the work that we do.
Thank you for that answer, Rohit. And, Rohit, sometimes the most powerful insights come not from data, but from metaphors. And the way you simplify complex ideas can often unlock understanding for people who might not have a technical background, like you just did in the previous question. So I've seen how listeners light up when guests give a picture up to hold on to, not just a definition. So if you had to explain the power of digital transformation in healthcare through one simple metaphor, what would it be?
Oh my God, that is, wow. Was it Steve Jobs who said, like, making things simple is extremely hard? Yeah. Now let me think about that. I think, what would I say? I would say, let me use a transport example, because I love,
Okay.
I don't know. So digital transformation to me right? And I'm very passionate about, all things digital. So digital transformation for me is not about putting a faster horse on the road. It's not about getting a faster horse on the road. It's about building the railway tracks for a railway that changes where you can travel, how you can travel, and even why you travel. Because with a horse, you just used to go from A to B. With a railway, you could travel absolutely for leisure, right? For a number of times, right? You can go much further, which is the where and the how in comfort, right? Without the bumps, without getting robbed in the middle of a forest or whatever it is. So to my mind, yeah, it's not about putting that faster horse on the road. It's about laying down those tracks for a railway that can change where, how, and why you travel.
That's beautifully explained. I really loved it. That's a great metaphor. Thank you so much. And talking about the future of healthcare. So Rohit, every industry is asking what's next. In healthcare, the stakes are higher because the answer could mean saving millions of lives, from personalized medicine that tailor therapies to genome to AI models predicting disease before symptoms appear. The next decades feels like science and technology finally converging in ways we can only dream of. So, what trends do you believe will define the next decade of healthcare innovation, and how is Global Logic preparing for them?
So I think, look, I'm going to start off with the cliche, right? And you know exactly what I'm going to say, right? AI. I think AI is, I know there's a lot of skepticism about AI in a lot of ways, but I think the use of AI in drug discovery, the use of AI in forecasting, where you're going to need drugs, the use of AI in regulatory writing, the use of AI in, in the way in which DeepMind have talked about protein folding. I think AI to me is absolutely going to be a huge game changer for the pharma industry, for healthcare in general, particularly not in the context of it's going to suddenly come in and do certain jobs in a particularly, in a way that's going to get rid of all this talent and reduce costs. Actually, no, because, with safety critical industries, you are going to need human in the loop. I think it's because the jobs that are really difficult where you didn't necessarily have human in the loop, right? In terms of drug discovery, I think that stuff can get accelerated very quickly. I think the bits that were really onerous and non-value adding in the administrative side of things or the writing side of things, where you can templatize a lot of things and simplify things. I think those bits are going to get automated. So I think to me, a lot of the disruptions in drug discovery have come and more will come. But I think the incremental impact of efficiency across the development lifecycle through to commercial and other areas, I think that's going to be a significant game changer. And in 3-5 years, when we look back on this, we're going to realize why were we asking about how AI is, how can we even question that AI, the potential of AI was not going to be met? Personally, I feel that in doing these things, keeping the human in the loop, it's going to be significant. I think the other element as well that slows things down, can we start looking at real digital twins? Can you simulate patients, right? Or actually, that's pretty sci-fi, but can you simulate factories and how they run? Can you predict errors? Can you do it more effectively? Can you increase your yield of vaccine in a particular batch through optimizing your manufacturing? And that way you can get more vaccines out to market more quickly. And there's very few shortages. How incredible would that be? Or how critical would that be in the context of another pandemic that say came in? Or for countries where you have a vaccine for a rare disease, and you have an outbreak and you need to develop that very, very quickly. If you have better throughputs, then you can actually meet those goals. So I think it's, digital twins is going to be significant. I think also autonomous supply chains as well. I think those self-optimizing supply chains that really talk about what the throughput is going to be in a particular day based on demand, being able to optimize and managing your demand and managing your material. I think that's going to have a significant shift in terms of the availability of medicines. Now, right. In the developed world, that's probably not as significant because, we do live in reasonable abundance. But I think, in the lesser developed world, that becomes exceptionally significant where you can get that throughput. because they don't have huge investments going into their countries around building multiple factories, etc. They may have a few that deliver that throughput for them, right? So having that efficiency, having that sort of self-optimization of that supply chain can really make a difference to those developed nations or the developing nations that require that volume of medicine as well in certain contexts. So I think those kinds of things for me will change. But then, as I said, I really hope they get that connected ecosystem, they get that pharma operating system end to end, enterprise wide, because all of that then becomes compounding.
Right. I think that was deeply insightful. And that also brings us to the end of our today's conversation, Rohit. I can't thank you enough for being here on Drug Diaries and sharing your views on a diverse range of topics, starting from patient centricity to digital transformation and the use of artificial intelligence in R&D and so many other areas. And innovative metaphors that you gave, analogies that you shared with us were extremely helpful. And I'm sure this is going to resonate with thousands of people out there. Thank you so much for your time today. And to everyone listening, I hope you're walking away with what I am. A sense that real transformation in healthcare comes when we combine brilliant minds, bold ideas, and above all, a deep commitment to people. Rohit, thank you once again for your time, your insights, and for leading with such authenticity. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in. I can't wait to see you on the next episode of Drug Diaries. Thank you, Rohit.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.